All right, folks, we have a new moon solar eclipse in Taurus tomorrow at 1:29 p.m. Pacific time. Tomorrow being Saturday, April the 30th. And as you know, I typically do my new moon videos after the new moon, but I just couldn't resist. I thought I'm just going to go ahead and get this out. So, and I have a feeling that this is going to be a two-part video. So I don't like to do videos that are longer than about 20 or 25 minutes. I feel like that's long enough. And if I'm not able to get through all the material, and I might not be, then I'll just do a part 2 tomorrow and we'll just continue talking. Now, as new moon solar eclipses go, and you know in my videos I talk about sort of the general meaning behind what's going on, but then I also look at the aspects that the new moon makes and other aspects that are being encoded into, that are happening at the time that are encoded into this lunation. And I also look at the rulership of the new moon. And all of that is actually quite simple, because at the end of the day, this new moon makes one significant transit, which is that it is conjunct the planet Uranus in Taurus, and I'll talk about what that means. There's one significant transit that is happening an hour or so after the new moon eclipse, so it's pretty important. That's Venus conjuncting Jupiter in Pisces, and as far as the rulership is concerned, it couldn't be simpler, because the ruler of Taurus is Venus. Venus is in Pisces. Venus is conjuncting Jupiter. Pisces is ruled by Jupiter and Neptune, which are both in Pisces. So the chart of the new moon solar eclipse, strangely enough, is actually disposited by Jupiter and Neptune. And so we'll talk about all this. As I said, I don't know if I'm going to get through all of this in one video or not. As new moon solar eclipses go, this is arguably one that everyone is looking forward to, and it's an exciting one because it's conjunct Uranus, and Uranus is an exciting planet. It's a liberating planet. It is an authenticating planet. It makes you more authentic to who you are. It is therefore a rebellious planet because it does not have much to do with social mores or conventions or the things that are tying you down, that are preventing you from becoming more authentic. But as I like to remind everyone, it really depends on where it is that this eclipse is falling in your chart. So if you are, for example, a Gemini ascendant, this would be happening in your 12th house. And 12th house eclipses, North Node eclipses in particular, are not, the eclipses we necessarily look forward to. That could be so depending on where the eclipse is falling. And the other thing about eclipses is that they bring about fated changes. Now, with eclipses, as I've mentioned before, transitioning people, the frequency. Now, nobody I know has done a scientific study on this, so I might be totally off base on this. I will be the first to say that, and we shouldn't really believe this until someone actually does a scientific study on this and proves it. But to me, it just feels like when it comes to issues related to mortality or people transitioning, somehow the eclipses kind of end up playing some sort of a role in this. And the frequency of either getting news about something that could affect your mortality, an illness or further progression of it, or actually people transitioning, the week before. Now, with eclipses, typically there are two eclipses, a new moon and a full moon, or a full moon and a new moon. So it would be a new moon solar eclipse, full moon lunar eclipse. Either it's the full moon lunar eclipse that happens first, followed by the new moon solar eclipse, or vice versa. This time we've got the new moon solar eclipse, and then on May the 15th, we've got the full moon lunar eclipse in Scorpio. And so while the eclipses are happening, I'll always say the week before and after eclipses are important. So and quite frankly, when it comes to the lunar eclipse, which is a lot less exciting and kind of a little bit more challenging than this particular solar eclipse on May the 15th, we've had energy building towards that at least from about March the 15th. So when you're looking at a lunar eclipse, I see the energy start about 2 months before and start to gather momentum as we head towards that. And with a solar eclipse, and this is important and relevant to tomorrow, April the 30th, I see the energy starting. There are various things I look for. I look at when the solar eclipse is taking place. I look to 2 months after the solar eclipse, so June the 30th. I look to see if the solar eclipse has a corresponding lunar eclipse. So if the solar eclipse is in Taurus, is there about 6 months after a lunar eclipse in Taurus? And in 2022, that is indeed the case. The lunar eclipse in Taurus is on November the 8th. And then I also look 2 months before that lunar eclipse as being significant, so September the 8th. So when it comes to the solar eclipse, we're talking about April 30th, June 30th, September the 8th, November the 8th. Okay, so these are kind of four. There are two primary dates, April 30th, November the 8th, and there are two secondary dates, still important, the week before, week after, that'll be part of this story, June the 30th and September the 8th. Now, I want to remind you, and this is important, that the first of the Taurus eclipses, it was a lunar eclipse, occurred on November the 19th, 2021. I mean the first of the Taurus eclipses in this round. Eclipses occur in a sign in this configuration, and by that I mean a North Node eclipse in a particular sign every 19 odd years. So you would have to go back to, in terms of thematic concentration of energy, you would have to go back to 2003, 2003 as a year that thematically had the same intensity and focus on the Taurus part of your chart as 2022. Okay? Now this is reminding me, I'm going to look at the dates that occurred, that the eclipses occurred in 2003, because sometimes when you do that, what's interesting is that the eclipses happen on the same date. Now, I've already given myself an assignment for another video, and we'll look at that separately. You're welcome to research. You can Google and see when the dates were in hold on, I have my computer here. Are we really going to do this real time? Let's see. Let's just see if I'm able to get things moving here in that regard. So energy is always a little bit sleepier and a little bit flatter and a little bit requiring more rest just before a new moon, which is where we are while I'm doing this video. And so remember, I always say that before a new moon, it's like the wave is pulling back from the shore and pulling back from the shore and pulling back from the shore and pulling back from the shore. And then when a new moon occurs, the wave starts to move forward. For a new moon, the timing is a new moon, 2 weeks after that, a full moon, and then the energy dies down to the next new moon. And typically, you have one new moon in every sign. So we have what I will call a lunar period or a lunation. So if this was not an eclipse, I would say it was a new moon in Taurus, and so from April the 30th to May the 30th, we'd be in sort of in an energetic cycle that would be related to the sign of Taurus and where Taurus sits in your chart and what house it occupies and what that house stands for. Now, when we're talking about an eclipse, not only does the new moon timing stay present, you've also got this eclipse timing that I've already shared with you. April 30th, June 30th, September the 8th, November the 8th. And it's important because this is the North Node eclipse, so it's a question of what it is that we're required to put our energy and our concentration into. What are we meant to work towards and walk towards, and where is our current energetic evolution? Where are there lessons that we need to master and things we need to lean into and sort out and accomplish, because it will free up. It's like the next key in our hero's journey. There are the things we need to meet. There are things, and these are things that will challenge us, that will grow us, that will develop us, that will develop weaker muscles. What we're being asked to release in the Scorpio part of your chart is something that has already been digested and is no longer worth holding on to, always challenging. Remember, I think I covered this briefly last time, with the North Node and South Node, sometimes in terms of iconography, the North Node is the mouth of the dragon, and the South Node is the anus, the backside of the dragon. So it is this question of what is being ingested and what is digested and has become already assimilated into our system. And so even though we have a certain comfort in keeping things where they are and staying in a particular zone or pattern or set of behaviors that subconsciously come very naturally to us and that other people might see as a strength or a propensity, there's actually no growth there. And particularly after the ages of 38 to 45, I find that life becomes pretty ruthless when it comes to emphasizing the importance of leaning into the North Node. Now with the nodes, anyone who follows Jyotish or anyone who's really familiar with the nodes will know that you have to deal with the nodes in a very grounded manner, or else they will just take you over. Your calling will just take you over. And people who lean into their callings in an unabashed manner often lead rather adventurous and stressful lives. Magical, perhaps, contribute, they fulfill their hero's journey, but often hero's journeys have to do with and include slaying dragons and sleeping on pavements and not eating anything and all sorts of tests that might be very magical and adventurous. But if you want to maintain a certain stability and security in your life, then you've got to approach the nodes in a grounded manner. But you can't ignore the nodes. You can't ignore the nodes. I have never, ever, ever, ever met any human being who had any chart where a person has had a fulfilling life by ignoring the North Node. Ever. So you gotta develop a relationship with what it is that you are here to lean into. And as the North Node eclipses occur, you've got to embrace and try and understand what it is that they're asking you to accomplish and conquer. It's like a tightrope walk. It's like you don't even know, because it's unfamiliar and it's a set of skills you're acquiring. You don't even know if the rope will appear in front of you, but you are meant to keep walking towards this destination that you are being called upon, where there's growth and where there is manifestation. But again, in a grounded manner, if you want to approach this and experience life in a more secure way and not in this kind of up-down crazy adventure that the nodes can take you on, that some might argue is sort of the point of life, but it's not easy, and not everyone has the stomach for it. And quite frankly, I don't know that we socially are set up for that kind of evolution. And so as a result of which, there are often no nets when you're kind of dealing with the falls that are associated with it. So be on your guard in that regard. Now, with all of that is said, the eclipses are unavoidable. We just about a week ago are in the whirlpool of the eclipses. Week before this North Node eclipse, week after, and then the week before the South Node eclipse on May the 15th, and week after, we're in the thick of it. And eclipses, as I've said before, when God takes the wheel, they don't have to always be negative. They can bring opportunities, they can bring contracts, they can bring culmination. They can also, however, bring sudden and unprecedented changes. But also when we're dealing with an eclipse that overwhelmingly on the internet has such a positive connotation as tomorrow's eclipse, just know that it, positive and negative in conventional human terms, it's an eclipse of liberation. And a liberation can mean someone passing away. A liberation can mean the ending of a job. A liberation can mean, so be very careful of conventional ideas of good luck and bad luck. And as I said, if you're dealing with the eclipses in a flatter part of your chart, a more challenging part of your chart, for example, if you're a Gemini ascendant that's happening in your 12th house, it's not quite as exciting necessarily as a more sort of yang or lit up part of your chart. Okay, so with all that said, we've got a new moon timeline that you're going to be dealing with. So things may start to happen in the Taurus part of your chart even within 24 to 48 hours or a week the emphasis for the next 4 weeks just as part of a normal new moon, but then you've got the 6-week cycle where over the next 2 months something grows as you head towards June the 30th. We kind of digest what's going on through September the 8th, and then September the 8th to November the 8th kind of goes through some sort of culmination. We don't, I don't think, have a new moon to full moon, a solar eclipse to lunar eclipse energy going on in Taurus next year, even though we continue to have Taurus-Scorpio eclipses next year in 2023. Now, there's a correlation, perhaps, to activities or energies that have gained momentum and started to make their presence felt between September the 19th of 2021 and November the 19th of 2021, 2 months before the November 19th lunar eclipse to that November 19th. So there could be a thematic resurgence that you've actually been feeling, not just over the last week, but maybe even since April the 11th, because April the 11th to today, April the 29th, Mercury was the first of the personal planets to walk into Taurus, because of course planets walk to spin into Taurus. So somewhere communications, April 11th to April 29th, communications, chatter, talk, gossip, contracts, paperwork, news, information, brewing, announcements coming in, the use of technology to some extent, writing things and language and mercurial things, Mercury. And the sun came into this part of the chart a week ago. So, and it's going to be here for 4 weeks. And so about a week ago, this part of the chart started to have its kind of annual solar review, where it was just, when the sun comes, it just lights up a whole part of the chart, and you start to examine nooks and crannies, and where are you at, and what changes would you like to make, and how are things going in that part of the chart? So much more quiet internal energy. And then, of course, when the sun is there, you have a new moon, and that kickstarts. So there's activity that's going to kickstart in this part of the chart, both in a 4-week cycle and a 6-month cycle, starting tomorrow, based on this communication and a week's worth of solar activity. But here's the thing. Mercury today went into the sign of Gemini, all right? But on May the 10th, it's going to be retrograde. So you have this solar eclipse that goes, September 19th to November 19th, 2021 energies, communication about it somehow, making the presence felt or energy starting to come into play starting April the 11th to April the 29th. Sun coming in here, new moon happens, but then bam, on May the 10th, Mercury goes, hold up. People, February, March, April, you've been moving forward with a certain set of assumptions. You have missed these important details. So let me slam the brakes on you and let you catch up on your life plan, project plan, whatever it is, and let us make some adjustments. And Mercury going retrograde means that as you head towards May the 10th, not that far away, if you want to back up your computers and your phones, do it now, over the next 2 or 3 days. Just go for it and get it done, okay? Because technology goes awry. And just know that as you head towards May the 10th, and then Mercury goes direct on June the 3rd. So May the 10th, June the 3rd, around those dates, the energy becomes really gnarly. Travel, baggage, meetings, technology, customer service interactions, commutes, your Ubers and your buses and your cars and your vehicle, breakdowns and anything related to Mercury, because the planet just stands still. And then it says, all right, let's reverse. And during that time, that reverse energy, some of that continues, that kind of miscommunication, crossed wires, communications and transactions are just not flowing freely. But then, there's something outside of the mundane challenges. Whenever people doubt astrology, I always just tell them to start tracking new moons and full moons, number one, and number two, experience Mercury retrogrades. And those are the two things that people talk about so often. Is it a full moon? Is Mercury retrograde? Because we do tend to feel that energy. I don't think I'm always making that up, because I think more and more people are getting attuned to watching for that. On a larger, more meaningful, rather than looking at Mercury retrograde as just an inconvenience, which it is. A real annoyance, yes. And sometimes, you can find yourself screaming at people because the communication, it's like one of those things about how you ordered a washing machine and the instructions say there should be 2 screws and there are no screws, and you're talking to customer service and customer service says, but there shouldn't be any screws. And you're just like, are we all lunatics here? Those kinds of, you're catching a flight and you have to make the transit somewhere, and they look at you straight in the face and say, what, but you're not going to be able to catch a transiting flight for another 4 days. And you're just like, am I losing my mind? What am I supposed to do for 4 days? That kind of craziness. What do you mean my bags are lost? What do you mean I am catching a flight at 6:35 p.m. when my ticket clearly says 6:35 a.m. and I looked at it 4 times already? That kind of jazz. That's not really the primary purpose of Mercury retrograde. The primary purpose of Mercury retrograde is to say, hold up, something has been missed. So let's get these details squared away. And it's never an entirely pleasant experience because you come up against something. Okay, and typically it's something communication related, agreements, plans, contracts, things that have to get done all of a sudden. And that's another area where people are just like, but you never said this, and you never said this, and this wasn't done, and that wasn't done. Okay, now we're already at the 21-minute mark. This is so much fun. Let me just say the following. On May the 23rd, people, we're only in April 30th. May the 23rd, Mercury comes back into Taurus because it's retrograde. Remember, May the 10th it goes retrograde. May the 23rd it comes back into Taurus. And on May the 28th, Venus, the ruler of Taurus, comes into Taurus. Okay, so whatever this communication has been going on, hey, something's brewing, April 11th to April 29th, the sun comes in at April the 22nd and says, let me light up this part of the chart. The new moon solar eclipse happens, and then we have Mercury retrograde. Whatever it is that has been brewing goes through both with Venus in Taurus between May 28th to June the 23rd. Has Venus's blessings and opportunities, but also has Mercury retrograde. So whatever has been announced or brewing has to be rethought. And, Mercury goes direct on June the 3rd, leaves Taurus on June the 13th, Venus leaves Taurus on June the 23rd, and a week after that, we're at this 2-month eclipse marker, June the 30th. So when I say something starts on April the 30th and June the 30th is an important marker, whatever is initiated, and it has been initiated for a while, you can almost go back to the initiation to about September the 19th, 2021, goes through a period of revision, and you may not be out of yet another birth canal, lots of birth canals this year, people, till about June the 30th, where you go, oh, all that stuff we were talking about, finally, we have a plan. Finally, on June the 30th. I'm going to end here because I think I'm going to leave you at this. Next video we're going to talk about Mars and Taurus in July and August. We're going to take you to the end of the Taurus eclipses, and I'm going to talk about the Venus-Jupiter conjunction that happens about an hour after in Pisces. All right, let me upload this so that you guys can at least start to review this and have a sense of how the next couple of months are going to play out. Just know that after this eclipse, the May 15th